you can live the best life and have the healthiest, mature relationships that you want. People know that we believe in the most important part of marriage is us, right? And in the word us, US, is the letter U first. In other words, the healthier you are, the healthier us can be, right? We do these Relate Well live talks to encourage you and inspire you, to connect to you, let you know our heart and our passion, and hopefully some ways inspire you to be the best you can be. Is divorce the right choice? Is divorce the right choice for you? It's always been said that 50% of marriages will actually end in divorce. Currently, the actual divorce rate is down to about 42%. So divorce has declined a little bit, which is a good sign. However, marriages aren't really happening that much, and cohabitation is. So what's killing marriage off is cohabitation. And when you look at the data around couples who live together, it's becoming more normalized, by the way. But the couples who live together, one of the things that the data reveals is that the reason they choose to cohabit, live together, rather than marry is not because they're afraid of marriage. As a matter of fact, most people who live together still see marriage as an ideal. They believe it's an ideal. It's something to aspire to. So why don't they as a group? Here's why. It's because they fear if they do marry, they'll get divorced. They fear they're going to be divorced. The divorce culture has created a fear of divorce. And it's because if I get married and I fear that I'm going to get divorced, well, then the best way to deal and avoid getting divorced is to not get what? Not get married. But I want to have a partner and I want to be able to have someone to live with. Your option then is cohabitation. That's one way people are handling it today. But let's be honest, people are still marrying. 42% of marriages are failing, and a lot of marriages that are still together aren't really healthy and mature. They're not as strong us as we call it. People struggle with, do I leave? Don't I leave? There is some research that indicates adultery doesn't have to kill a marriage off. And the research I was reading about this suggested it's not the adultery that killed it off. That's not to minimize the pain or the betrayal. What actually damages it, that leads it to a divorce, is how the couple handled the adultery. That's what led to the divorce. And so one of the things that we do in our world and Relate Well, in my world as a counselor, is we take couples who are divorcing or separating, or where divorce becomes an option, and we get them healthy and stable in 3 days through our marriage intensives. I always tell people, we can get you out of divorce court and get you back together. Just got to do it our way because your way is not working. Is divorce the right choice? Because every relationship is going to go through struggles. Every relationship is going to have struggles. I've been married 37 years to my first wife, Luella. We are a strong us, and we love each other. We're great friends, and we don't really usually argue much about things today because we both have matured emotionally, and we've learned to value us rather than ourselves. However, that does not mean we have not had our challenges and our issues. I promise you, we have. 2004, 2005 into six some were really the worst 2.5 years of my marriage. We were very disconnected. We both had a lot of things to work on. I had a lot of things to work on. A lot of it unconsciously had a father wound that I needed to deal with, and some unresolved issues there that were leaking out the unconscious level and affecting us. I can tell you this for a fact, and my wife would back it up. In all our years of marriage, 37, I have never thrown out the divorce word. I grew up in divorce, and so did she. I know what it's like coming from a divorced home. I know what it's like being raised in a dysfunctional step family. I know what it's like to have abuse. I know what all that's like. I was not going to pass that down to myself, to Luella, who grew up in a broken home as well with a divorce and craziness, and I'm going to pass it to my kids. Wasn't going to do it. And so I had made a decision before I got married, till death do us part. I'm dead serious about it. That's what I meant. I even told her jokingly in the early years of marriage, if you ever leave me, I am going with you, because that's how committed I am. All right. So for me, divorce was never going to be an option. Now, statistically, her and I should be divorced based on history and all the data. But you see, just because statistics says we should be a certain way doesn't mean I can't choose to live a better way. And I have. And it's not being arrogant. I'm just giving you, this is where I'm at. This is how I choose to live my life now. We believe that one of the best ways to curb divorce is to understand that the most important part of any marriage is not the husband and it's not the wife. It's the third part of the marriage. Third part wins, you both win. Third part loses, you both lose. What's the third part of the marriage? It's us. What is us? Well, us is not me and it's not Luella. It's not you or your spouse. Us is the synergy that exists in between the two of you. It's the relationship itself. By the way, it takes two to make an us, one to kill it. Did you get that? Two to make it, one to kill it. And everything you do in your marriage gives to you or gives to us. There is no other option. And if the bulk of your decisions are based on what's best for you, then when us dies, don't complain. Because what you basically said by your actions is, I don't value us, I actually value me. And because I value me and not us, us is going to die. It takes two to make an us, and one to kill it. And when us wins, you actually both win. Matter of fact, your kids win, because your kids know when us is in the house. But how do you know when us is in the house? It's actually simple. The way you know us is in the house, you ready? It's not difficult. You feel it. You always know when us is in the house because you can feel its presence and you can feel its absence. In other words, when us is in the house, you feel the love, you feel the tenderness, you feel the connection, you feel the warmth, you feel the goodness. That's why I always tell couples, you want 3 people in your bed every night. You, her, and us. When us is in the bed at night, at the end of the day, you sleep well, you cuddle, you snuggle. Might even put your arm around each other, legs on each other. That's us. You also know when us is not in the house. You'll feel that too. When us is not in the house, you feel the angst, you feel the tension, you can feel the resentment, you can feel the bitterness, you can feel the unforgiveness, you can feel the silence. So can your children. Because everybody knows when us is in the house. Everybody knows. You feel its presence and you feel its absence. When us is not in the house at the end of the day, when us is not in the house in your bedroom, it looks like this. Get your feet off me. Easily back to back. Look, we're supposed to be mature adults and we choose to live that way. I won't. I grew up with that. I ain't living it. Got it? And so I've learned that I would rather live a life based on what's best for us, because nobody gets married to be miserable. I didn't, and I don't want to be. But I learned about 8 or 9 years into my marriage, quit living for you, start living for us. Now, for that to happen, you got to move to humility. All right? So one way you can actually divorce-proof your marriage is make us a priority. However, sadly, in reality, most people don't. Western culture doesn't value relationship. We value winning arguments. We value being right and making the other person wrong. We value individualism, particularly hyper-individualism. And the more individualist you become, the more immature you will actually be. Because individualism undermines the ability to create an us. It takes 2 to make an us and 1 to kill it. Because our culture values individualism and being right and winning arguments rather than having a relationship. What happens is, over time, couples start to disconnect emotionally. You always hear it from me, those who follow me. I'm doing it again. Here it goes. That song by the Righteous Brothers. You've lost that loving feeling. And when you start to lose the loving feeling, you start to disconnect and move away from each other into aloneness. It is not good to be alone, because humans were not created for aloneness. We are created to have intimate, connected, healthy, emotionally bonded relationships. So when the marriage starts to fall apart, even at the emotional level, people start to question, do you love me? Do I love you? I don't feel love for you. You know that phrase, I love you, but I'm not in love with you? And we talked about what that phrase means when someone says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And so, but when couples start disconnecting at the emotional level, they also will disconnect spiritually. They'll also disconnect physically. They'll start sharing ideas. They start to disconnect intellectually. And as you start to disconnect, you feel the lack of us. And when you feel the lack of us, you just feel tension and coldness and distance and angst, which makes your brain start to ask questions. And the longer you live that, usually one person, if not both, but usually one person starts to wonder, should I just leave? Should I divorce? There's no sense of being together. I don't feel love for them. So why am I here? Those kinds of conversations start to show up. But then they think about the reasons they need to stay committed. Scott Stanley, Dr. Scott Stanley from University of Denver, Center for Family and Marital Studies, phenomenal researcher, a wonderful man. His research is on commitment in relationships. And just kind of at the 1,000-foot view, he kind of points out, he does point out that there are 2 types of commitment in a marriage. There is commitment by devotion and commitment by constraint. Commitment by devotion is intrinsic motivation. It's internal. The motive for the commitment comes from within me. In other words, I feel love for Luella. I feel it. It's inside of me. I feel this devotion. I feel this love. I feel this desire. She's a source of pleasure in my life. And because I feel that devotion, the commitment to the marriage is motivated inside of me. It's motivated by the feelings of love, the feelings of desire, the feelings for the connection. Commitment by devotion is what you really want in your marriage. But Dr. Stanley also points out there is another form, and that was commitment by constraint. There's something that constrains you to stay. It's not love. It's not the feelings. These are external motivations. These are things outside of you that you consider. As you think about them, they go, I need to stay in this thing. So what are external motivators that constrain a person to stay committed? Here's some ideas. I don't have any devotions or feelings left to you, but I'm committed, not because of feelings of love, but because of the kids. What will it do to them? So children, another thing that constrains you is, well, I'm fat and gray and no one's going to want me at age 59. This is the best I've got, so I'll just stay. Another thing that constrains me is sometimes religion, faith. God hates divorce. Another is, if I divorce, my family will turn against me. I'll feel guilt and shame, and my family won't be there for me. Those are things that motivate you to stay in the relationship, but it's not love. It's external motivations. It's things out here that motivate you to stay. Now, let me say something about commitment by constraints. You do not want to stay in your marriage that way long term. Got it? I don't want to stay in a marriage where I have no feelings of love, but something motivates me outside me to stay because of guilt or whatever reason, fear, whatever. Commitment by constraint, though, is not a bad thing in the short run, all right? It's not a bad thing in the short run. Why? Because those things that constrain you to stay keep you committed and connected and in the relationship when there's a part of you that wants to run or get away. So they do motivate you to stay, but you don't want to stay there long term. You need to work through whatever's going on and get those feelings of devotion back. I call that the usness. Get the usness back. Those are the two types of commitment. You can think about where you are. But the longer that you stay in a relationship because something constrains you, guilt, shame, religious issues, whatever they are that constrain you to stay in it, the more miserable you become, the more angry you'll become. You could get depressed. And at some point, your brain does say, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And then you're wrestling with, should I leave or should I not leave? You see?